Irregular multi-billion-rand contracts entered into between Eskom and Gupta-Linked entities feature strongly in the 4th edition of the State Capture Report. In particular, the manner in which Eskom executives were fired illegally and then paid multi-million-rand golden handshakes to make way for Gupta-Linked entities to benefit from deals with the utility. State Capture Inquiry Chair, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, releasing Part 4 of the report just last week. For more on this, we're joined in studio by our senior reporter, Tumaole Mohlaoli. In fact, Tommy, it's Part 3 and Part 4 that focuses quite a lot on Eskom and what unfolded there.
Yes, absolutely. So it tells you a lot about the level of capture that Eskom had experienced, that 2 parts of this particular volume will be dedicated to it. And it just goes to speak because Eskom, during what was called the lost years, the load-shedding crisis, really put our economy literally on its knees. And it shows that Eskom was one, apart from, of course, the Free State province, which is another evidence stream, which was the center of the Gupta's particular strategy to try and capture that, state-owned utility.
And central to the Guptas playing such a big role in terms of the plunder at Eskom, according to the State Capture Inquiry report, was former President Jacob Zuma.
Yes. Former President Jacob Zuma, and this is why there was that, back and forth and that the butting of heads between former President Jacob Zuma and the Zondo Commission of Inquiry while it was still, hearing evidence and leading oral evidence. Because, the Commission wanted to find out exactly what was the former head of state's role, whether he had executive overreach, because we heard about meetings where then Eskom Chair Dudu Myeni would be present, and there would be meetings where executives were summoned. I think Zola Tsotsi, who was of course also the CEO at the time, would have been summoned to one of those meetings. Didn't understand why this was happening, because it was not happening also in the premises of Eskom, and didn't seem like a formal meeting. And key to this was that there were deals that were supposed to be, given in a certain direction, so to speak, to benefit
the Gupta family.
Gupta family or Gupta-linked entities. And so this is what the report is finding, and the report is quite scathing in that.
Quite scathing, and recommending criminal prosecution of particular individuals, including the former president, Brian Molefe, Matsela Koko, and Anoj Singh.
Yes, Anoj Singh is one character that seems to have not given himself quite a good account of what happened in terms of his roles, because he was CFO. Anoj Singh is an interesting character because he was both CFO of Transnet and then he parachuted onto Eskom. This also happened with Brian Molefe, because Molefe moved as a CEO and then moved from Transnet also to Eskom. And this is central, according to the findings of the State Capture Report, to a strategy to try and ensure that those 2 state-owned entities were captured, particularly Eskom, because Eskom and Transnet are linked. You must remember that Transnet, through its rail infrastructure, transports all of Eskom's coal. And when there was an issue with the Tegeta coal mining, I beg your pardon, contracts and the supply and of coal and the quality of coal, which Molefe and others blamed on long-standing apartheid contracts, and saying that they wanted to revitalize the economy and bring new players in. But it certainly begged the question, why then contracts were entered into, why advance payments were made to certain individuals, ranging into the hundreds of millions of rands, but when you add it up, it's into the billions, and this effectively sunk the power utility, which is still trying to recover. I mean, it makes your head spin, doesn't it? Especially when we think about the kind of debt that Eskom is in now. What is it, at 400 billion rand in debt is Eskom's sort of bill of debt. So we talk about these individuals that we've just mentioned now, but then the report also brings into the discussion the chair of the board at the time, 2014-2015, Dr. Ben Ngubane, and then who was the public enterprises minister at the time, and that was, of course, Lynn Brown. So the list does go on and on in terms of that particular period in Eskom's history. Yes, of course. And as far as Lynn Brown and Dr. Ben Ngubane are concerned, they also, when you look at the evidence of Dr. Ben Ngubane, he was of the view that he did not do anything untoward in terms of his involvement.
Well, they're all of that view,
certainly,
yeah.
certainly, they're all of that view. That in the firing and hiring of executives, you must remember at one point, Eskom did not have an executive board because all the executives, particularly when you look at the firing in the financial sector, that was something that was very concerning. Dr. Ngubane was of the view that the executives were overstepping their authority in terms of pushing back, in terms of instructions that were given, because he was of the view that the instructions that he had received from the head of state and the war room, so to speak, that was established to try and steer the power utility back online were not questionable. So these executives also had a lot to answer to. It's interesting they were not mentioned because it seems as if the explanation was above board because they were given goals and handshakes.
Yeah.
And when they were moved out, then it opened the way for that.
One just thinks about all these hundreds of millions of rand and what could have been done with all of that money. Of course, the 1 billion rand housing debacle, is it in the Free State?
Yes, that's in the Free State.
Is also part of this part of the state capture inquiry report.
Absolutely.
What good we could have done with all of these vast amounts of money.
Absolutely.
Tumaole Mohlaoli, thanks very much indeed for coming in.